I'm Richard Keys.
And I'm Andy Gray.
It's a very good relationship with Mesut, and professionally, I push him for improve or for give.
And we will be back with Unai Emery very shortly. You are watching the mighty beIN Sports, joining up the world from our International Broadcast Centre here in Qatar. Are you well?
I am very well, but I'm very pleased to be back. I don't mind the international break. Gives us a chance to recharge our batteries, but I'm so pleased that league football
That Nations League was heavily criticised prior to the start last week. I thoroughly enjoyed it here on beIN Sports, and what I've enjoyed most about it is that it's competitive. I don't understand still how it works, but we've got competitive football at international level regularly. Nothing wrong
that's
with
great.
that.
That's much, much better.
Right, what's wrong with Harry Kane, if indeed there is anything wrong with England's centre-forward? In defence of Kane, here's the Spurs manager.
Because Harry is so big player and everyone expects him in every single action to do something different, that is why the exigence and the expectative are completely different when you compare with another player.
You see, it is extraordinary. He scored for the first time in August recently, and now under the microscope with all kinds of different questions being asked of Kane. But it's interesting because Kane is a different centre-forward right now to the player that was scoring goals for Tottenham a year ago, even up to February, Andy, when he got that ankle injury. And more of this we will explain to you later. But the statistics say he's a different centre-forward now, although the goals are still coming. The way he plays is different.
Well, it might be. I mean, in fairness, when Harry Kane was going to have a spell when things weren't working for him, people were going to start to overanalyse his performances. Now, I know what it's like to have a serious injury and it maybe affect the way you play as a centre-forward. I do that. I do know that. And I've spoken to Alan Shearer over the years. He had to do the same. But I'm not so sure that injury that he had is sufficient for Harry to change. It might be all sorts of things, Richard. There's so many factors
The
that could be
statistics will argue differently, and I'll be interested in your take later when you see those. Excuse me, I've had this 10 days now, it's driving me mad. Globalisation, not something you're a big fan of, but it is coming. Girona to play Barcelona in Miami. It's a subject, Andy, that's caused consternation in the States and in Spain this week, but we will investigate further later because I think the tide is sweeping all in front of it, and that's going to happen.
Listen, I was a fan of the 39th game, taking a certain game away and playing a game there. Don't mind that, but I don't want to take the whole league abroad. No, thank you.
Well, where is abroad? Is that where your fan base is? Is Barcelona's fan base?
Is it Barcelona?
No, there's a chance there's more people want to watch Barcelona in Miami than there is in their home city right now.
We shall see.
It's an interesting argument. Also, talking with John Richardson, the author of Unspoken, the untold story of Gary Speed. He's been talking with the late, great Speedo's wife, Louise, and indeed family, Father Roger and more. What a tale that was. Still is. Oh, and incidentally, today would and should have been Ray Wilkins' 62nd birthday. Big love, Ray, wherever you are now. Keep smiling, fella. This is what we did 2 weeks ago. Future of football. In Gibraltar, they're paying their players cryptocurrency.
I think that we're bringing in something new. It's transparency. It's the future.
Wait until you see where this Brit abroad has been playing his football this past decade.
Oh, wow.
That's the definitive, is it not?
You know, it opens up your eyes to a lot of cultures and experiences, and I'm really glad what I've done.
Ivan Gazidis, the current chief exec at Arsenal, Pipo, is being mentioned as somebody that might come and run the football club. Can you tell us any more about that?
This has been a great sign for fans. To sign to appointing a man like Gazidis should be another great sign of a turning to the high level in football.
Well, would you believe the Gazidis story continues?
I can't believe it, no.
I mean, this is the modern-day version of Arsene Wenger, will he, won't he?
Well, you're the journalist. What is keeping this story?
I've no idea.
What is keeping
I have absolutely no idea.
So tell me, now, Milan want him, yes?
Yes.
Are Arsenal prepared to let him go?
Well, it would appear that that is the case. It would appear he wants to go. They're even talking about him taking Aaron Ramsey at the end of the season.
So what's stopping them?
It's an Italian appointment. Maybe there's the answer.
Maybe it's an Arsenal appointment. That's the answer.
OK. Other stories that have caught our eye previously, and of course we maintain an eye upon them. We did this story, 18 months ago? England's youngsters abroad. Now look how this fashion has grown. Not good enough to play in the Premier League, but around Germany, Holland, Italy, Portugal, Spain even. It would appear that these young men are forging a career for themselves, and this can only be good news, you would think, going forward for England.
I would guess, and I don't know, I would guess that there are more English players now plying their trade abroad in Europe than at any other time.
Agreed.
In English football.
Probably more that have got a chance of playing at a higher level than those who are left at home.
When you hear Gareth Southgate bemoan the fact that he doesn't have enough players to choose from in the Premier League, Gareth, there's your solution. Get on Eurostar.
Excuse me.
And go to France, Germany, Holland, Italy, Portugal and Spain.
And post-Brexit, take your passport with you, of course. This is interesting. Chelsea are always loaning players out, aren't they? Look at this boy, Hector. Joined from Reading 3 years ago, went back on loan. Since then he's been to Frankfurt, Hull, and now Sheffield Wednesday. He's never played for Chelsea. This item here is suggesting he probably never will. Although his contract at Stamford Bridge lasts another 2 years yet. It's extraordinary.
What is it about Chelsea? This is another... Do you remember Winston Bogart?
Yes.
Who played at Chelsea and never played for Chelsea, but he used to fly in from Amsterdam every morning to Chelsea to train and fly back to Amsterdam in the afternoon.
Just to fulfil his
contract. And he did that for 3 years.
And get his money.
And get his money.
This
is ridiculous.
Slightly different. But there might be a solution, because UEFA now are suggesting that going forward they want to implement a policy where clubs can only lend 8 at one go. Chelsea have got 40 out at the moment.
Wow.
40.
That's too many. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I mean, how can you do that? Well, so there was a player there, Delic. 8 years he's been there, 10 loans. What's happening? 8 years in Chelsea's books and then 10 loan spells. That shouldn't be allowed to happen.
The one that we just caught a glimpse of, I have nothing to say about this, because I just don't understand that. Maybe not against City or Chelsea, but against 16 other teams in the Premier League, Jose. Of course you have, in my view. Eric Cantona is of the same opinion. This one's slightly overdue. I expected to be reading this 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, but Eric's popped up.
And I don't know, I'm sorry, Eric, with the best one in the world, you were an amazing Manchester United player. Is he going to be Manchester United coach?
You sat with him once, in an intimate environment, the two of you, for an hour, talking football, and I remember you leaving that conversation saying, I could not have been more impressed.
I know, you're absolutely right. But is he going to be manager of Manchester United? No. No. You'd put him in there before Roberto
I wouldn't
Martinez.
put him in, but I wouldn't... before Martinez. I put myself in before Martinez. Don't worry about that. This is fascinating.
Yeah,
Does it mark a change in philosophy?
No. I think almost at times, I think Pep at times, when you read his book, and you have as well, you've read his book, and he talks about football, how tiki-taka, everyone believed it was this way of playing, and he kind of chuckled and said, no, it wasn't. I think, like, that's exactly how I see him now. I have to say...
Basically, his football was, we'll keep possession here and then switch as fast as we can
to the weak side,
whilst we've drawn everybody else in and bang, goal.
And I think that's what he does. He wants my teams to win. If they can win playing great football, that is even better.
He does look like David Brent there, doesn't he? Anyway, this weekend, big weekend in the Premier League, because they're trialling VAR in multiple games for the first time.
OK, so... Does that mean that there's going to have 6 venues then, where there's 6 games or 6 venues where there's a good luck with that then, yeah?
Good luck.
Yeah.
Now this one is fascinating. Handball and the interpretation thereof. The laws of the game state that handling the ball involves a deliberate act of a player making contact with the ball with the hand or arm. However, it's emerged that after a meeting of top-flight clubs, the PGMOL, who run the game in England, have directed English referees that no goal should be awarded, even if it is an accidental handball.
I agree with that.
But the international board doesn't, and they've told the PGMOL, you cannot come up with your own interpretation of the laws of the game. Ours is the interpretation.
Ah, right. But I think the PGMOL, and I'm not a big fan, I think they're right in this case. That was allowed because neither official saw it. Simple.
Correct.
Had they seen it, I think it would have been disallowed. And rightly so. You can't, and even if it's accidental, you can't score a goal with your arm because it's not legal.
It's going to cause confusion going forward. This one, I mean, I think we've all been aware of this for a while, that clubs do this, haven't they? I mean, this little table here. West Ham, look how they've cooked the books.
But you correct me if I'm wrong, because you will. Is 55,000 not how many tickets they've sold for the game?
This is ticket sales, season tickets and the like.
Right. And this is the actual amount of people that went through the turnstiles, as it were called in the old days. So, but if they've sold 55, why can't they claim that?
Because the people that are there, the attendance, is 42. Right. Manchester United, in fairness.
Brilliant. That's
well done.
Fantastic. But they're all at it then.
But that's not right.
No. It's misleading.
Boris, well done. He was Mayor of London when the stadium, the Olympic Stadium, was handed in effect to West Ham United. If you remember, he said it's my job to make sure that the taxpayers are looked after here and get the best possible deal. That was in 2012. In 2018, stadium operators confirmed that the taxpayer now faces losses for the next 97 years.
Good deal, that.
Very well done, Boris.
Well done, Boris.
Excellent.
Top deal, big man.
And this, I can't add anything to. Quote of the week, Jorge Alberto Hank hiring Diego Maradona to work for Dorados in Mexico's drug cartel heartland. During my conversations with him, he's been very excited to come. Honestly, it was easier to convince him than I thought.
Well, I didn't think I'd see him back coaching.
I've nothing to say on that.
Nor me.
Premier League fixtures this weekend.
Starts with a biggie, doesn't it?
All of them live with us, of course, here on beIN Sports. Paul Robinson, the former Tottenham and England goalkeeper, one of our guests this weekend. We're also delighted to be welcoming back John Barnes.
Yeah.
The two will be with us as we kick off with Tottenham and Liverpool. What a way to restart.
Great start. Looking forward to that game.
You're watching Keys and Gray, not without the odd glitch and bump and hitch this week, but things have calmed. When we come back, what is wrong, if anything, with Harry Kane? You might be scratching your head and saying to yourself, well, why is anyone concerned about what Harry Kane is doing right now? He's broken that August duck. He is scoring goals on a consistent and regular basis, almost as many that he was scoring prior to the injury. Do you remember when he went over on his foot?
Yeah, I do.
We all worried.
Yeah, at Bournemouth.
Look, I mean, it's not that dissimilar. But when you scratch beneath the surface, the facts suggest he is a very different player now to the one that first surfaced and the one that was playing and scoring goals prior to that injury. Look, I mean, I know you won't like this too much.
Nah, well, I don't understand it for a start.
It is, in some cases, dramatically different.
Well, one or two are. I mean, when I look at that, right? Yeah, I get that. Shots and average minutes per shot on target. I get that. Average minutes per shot.
Prior to the injury, there was only three players, and you'd expect to name them: Lewandowski, Messi, Ronaldo, that were shooting as often as he was.
Right.
And you've played there as a goal scorer.
I know.
If you're not shooting, you're not really going to be scoring too many goals.
If you're not having attempts at goal, then you're not getting as many goals as you used to get. That's 100% sure. Now listen, Harry might be having a problem. He might be coming back from this injury. He might not be quite as confident taking chances on that the way he used to. He might be a little reluctant to hit a ball in a crowded area initially, hard, because he feels that the ankle may get caught again. That might be part of this. It might be part of it. But it's also the fact that he's an athlete. And athletes cannot, year after year, after year, after year, play at that level when you play the kind of sport Harry Kane does.
Well, here's the man that did much of the investigative work that we're just talking about, and we indeed have only scratched the surface. It's Matt Furness, statistician. Hi, Matt, how are you?
I'm not too bad. How are you two?
Yeah, we're good, thanks, Matt. Matt, put some meat on the bone for us. I mean, I've just skirted around. James Gearbrand, who was, picked up the information that you put out, and I think did a really good job with it. Explain to us more what it is and how it is you think that Kane is different.
Yeah, fine. First of all, I want to say that I do kind of agree with what Andy said there. yeah, he's shooting a lot less, but he's still keeping up that goal rate. So there's nothing seems to be wrong in front of goal. It doesn't matter if he's shooting less frequently. But drilling down to the numbers a bit more, he is attempting a shot like half as much of the time as he did previously before that injury. So looking from the start of last season to the period he got injured against Bournemouth, he was attempting a shot on target around 36 minutes on average, every 36 minutes on average. That's now a ratio of every 83 minutes per shot on target. That's maybe a little bit worrying for Spurs fans, but he's still keeping up that goal rate, really. So he scored 8 goals in 11 starts in the Premier League alone since he came back from that injury. So as long as he keeps scoring, I don't think Spurs fans are really going to have an issue with how he's playing and maybe the way that he's changed his style.
Matt, when you're compiling the stats on an individual like Harry Kane, I talked about that, he might just be off form, he might be doing this, he might be doing that differently. But how much might it be the players around him? If you're a centre-forward, you rely on your teammates supplying you the right kind of ball, the right kind of service. So maybe Dele Alli isn't playing so well this season. Maybe Christian Eriksen hasn't done so well since the turn. Son being away at the Asian Nations Cup might... All these things surely might also be affecting Harry Kane if we look more deeply into it. Would that be fair?
That's definitely the case. I would say that during the period that he spent out injured, he didn't miss too many games, but maybe Spurs in training changed the style of play that they wanted to go against opposition teams against. So they might have been thinking, OK, we're going to try and spread the goals out a little bit more, so we're going to change the way we play. Since Harry Kane's come back in the side, maybe that hasn't quite clicked again, and that maybe the opportunities that they're giving him aren't the same. I know you probably aren't a fan of the term expected goals.
No, you've picked that up, Matt.
You took the next question almost from my lips. Go on.
Go on, Matt. I love it.
Well, you may say that it's not really a metric to look at, but the terminology expected goals, I can get why people don't really like that. But it's really just telling you the quality of chance that players are having. So an average player... so this isn't looking at Kane specifically, but an average player, you can look at shots that we've recorded in our database over a 15-year period, maybe 200,000 shots. What are the likelihood of that scenario, that type of chance, being scored from that position on the pitch? Obviously, Harry Kane is an above-average striker, so he should be scoring more than the average player. But you have to look at his the chances that he's getting in games now. Before he got injured, so since the start of last season up to the Bournemouth game, he was having an average expected goals tally of around 0.8 a game, which means he should be averaging about a goal a game based on the quality of chances he's having. That's nearly a third since he's been injured, 0.38, about half. So he's having half the quality of chances that he had before. Now, that is probably because he's having fewer shots, he's not getting as many positions. But conversely, you could say that, OK, he's having fewer shots and he's not having as quality chances, but his conversion rate is so much higher now because he's having fewer shots and he's picking those shots in better scenarios.
Matt,
so he's not...
Sorry, Matt, I was watching Harry play the other game against Spain. There was much made about his performance there. And surely, if he's getting that kind of service, I mean, it's easy for everyone to say, is Harry Kane the same player? Harry Kane might be sitting there saying, I am the same player, but... What's happening is I'm not getting, and England was a fine example against Spain, I'm not getting the opportunity to show you I'm still the same player.
Yeah, and in the World Cup, I think England had 8 shots from open play.
There you go.
In the whole World Cup.
And he was the golden boot.
And he found exactly that. And he wasn't getting the service. So you see against the Colombia in the first knockout stage, he was dropping so deep because he just wasn't getting the ball. He wasn't getting the service. And then everyone starts criticising him for that. So it's not really his fault. I think, as you say, the service hasn't quite been there. He did have a couple of good chances against Watford, namely the header in the second half near the end, quite similar to the one he scored against Manchester United, which you would be disappointed in not scoring. But unless you're giving him chances on a plate all the time, then, maybe you can expect that he will...
On the other hand, Matt, I hear what both yourself and Andy are saying, but on the other hand, players of his quality are expected to do something special, aren't they? And Ronaldo's done that for a long time. Messi's done that for a long time. And yet, Kane, according to your research, is not putting himself into a position whereby that can happen. So do we know why not?
No. I think it goes to what Andy's saying, and maybe the service has changed a little bit there. We have to remember that these top players, they go through peaks and troughs, and a lot of Harry Kane's career has been a peak. This is maybe just a small trough. If you look at Ronaldo last season, up until Christmas, he was pretty terrible. He wasn't scoring goals. And then the second half of the season was fantastic. Won the Champions League. So who's to say Harry Kane isn't going to do that again? Last season, after 4 games, Harry Kane had scored the same number of goals as he's got this season after 4 games, but he's had 18 shots more. So who's to say that maybe Harry Kane just isn't more clinical this season, and that's what we should look at.
Matt, I've thoroughly enjoyed.
Hold on, Matt. Before you go, I want to say one thing with Matt on his way out. Matt, just to show you, I'm a fan of expected goals. I fully expect Harry Kane to score tomorrow.
But statistically, can he justify that?
Yes, he will. I'm telling you, he's scoring tomorrow. Harry Kane's scoring tomorrow.
Matt, we'll talk to you in a week.
Matt. Thanks, guys.
Really
Thanks,
enjoyed
Matt.
it. Thanks very much,
Thank you, Matt.
Appreciate it. And I hope that's helped you a little more with expected goals.
No.
You're not having it?
No, well, I do. It's a bit like Glenn Hoddle used to say about Andy Cole. The thing about Andy is he needs 4 shots.
Is this from the throw-in coach file?
Yeah, we'd probably go in there, aye.
Wanted to talk to that guy this week and he didn't want to talk to us.
Didn't he?
No.
I'm happy to learn, you see.
He said, I wish the boys had been a bit more inquisitive and I would have helped them. But when we asked...
And he didn't?
No.
Actually, I would have liked to have spoken to him.
Busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Busy.
Well, listen, he might be busy. Yeah.
It's worth noting, actually, the first throw-in that Liverpool took the weekend that we pointed this out ended up in the possession of the opposition.
Yeah, it did, actually. But that was only one. It was only one.
You're watching Keys and Gray on beIN Sports. Paul Robinson, John Barnes join us this weekend. John should know more about perhaps taking throw-in,
yes,
from Liverpool stock. He'll be able to help us out. Yeah. When we come back, why doesn't Mesut Ozil ever play at Newcastle? I think that translates into he's moody, he's lazy, and he doesn't ever fancy a trip to the northeast. And I'm not actually talking about John Cross.
Your Spanish is improved.
I'm talking about Mesut Ozil.
Your Spanish is good.
John, how are you?
Yeah, very good.
Hi, John.
Nice to be with you.
That's a
very
great little story this week.
I would like to inform you that I have been to the northeast already this season. So there you go. There's one ticked off my northern list already.
But Ozil hasn't yet. He is this weekend, John. I mean, that's an astounding statistic, isn't it? In 5 years, he hasn't been used by Arsenal at Newcastle. Why?
Astonishing. It's a combination of a couple of shoulder injuries, being rested, and missing it through another injury as well. I mean, it is remarkable. That. I mean, it's 5 years, as you rightly say. It's just astonishing, you know. I mean, I do think there was, there's been a few players down the years, haven't there? The kind of, the newspapers, including myself, have picked up upon missing certain trips. And Mesut Ozil at Newcastle I think, is going to go down in folklore. I hadn't realised it until this week, and it is an amazing quirk. And it is one of those where I think sometimes that game can test you. I think as a player, as a team. Newcastle sort of in the midst of not very good place at the moment, really. But having watched sort of Spurs up there, they had to really labour hard to get their win, as did Chelsea. And I just think you're always going to get tested at some point, but by Newcastle, and it can often be a physical, mental battle. And I mean, all those things really sort of goes into the pot as sometimes the doubts around Mesut Ozil, special player. But as Unai Emery says in his own unique way, if you can understand it, he has to give more to the team. He has to deliver more. He has, after all, just had 2 weeks off into his international break.
Listen, John, I think once that stat came out this week, I thought to myself, who's going to be the first name on the team sheet this weekend? Mesut Ozil. It was an absolute certainty.
Got to.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's got to be, hasn't he? And the funny thing is, guys, at Cardiff, Emery sacrificed Mkhitaryan to make the team work, I think, because he's maybe thinking, well, I can't get all these attacking players in. I'm going to have to drop one out. And I felt a bit sorry for Mkhitaryan, simply because I think he's a good player. He's very... it's got to be the right day for him, that sort of thing, really. And he can be a little bit sort of temperamental in his performances as well. But I did feel a little bit sorry for him that he was the one that was sacrificed. So it'll be interesting to see just how long that goes on for, and whether Emery really does continue to persevere with Ozil.
John, a collection of little bits and pieces here. As City join United through the 500 million revenue barrier, first question is, have those two clubs now cemented a shift in the power base again as Arsenal rebuild? Tottenham would appear to be a complete mess at the moment. And as for West Ham United, your mate Andy Dunn this week absolutely filleted them, didn't he? So, I mean, what is happening in the capital city?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The Manchester clubs have really moved apart, and I thought the City thing was very, very impressive, I must say, simply because I think they've done it. They've obviously invested a lot of money. No one's going to kid themselves there, but they're doing it within the rules now. You know, they are being sort of, you know, self-substantiating in that self-sustaining model. Really, now they've invested all that money. I think it's something that obviously West Ham wanted to do. That's become a dog's dinner. Some of the fallout pieces, you know, Andy Dunn's piece, as you rightly say, was really interesting. Matt Hughes in the Times, you know, hit upon some real doubts about kind of leaks from within, the scouting system, that sort of thing, really. They've spent so much money, they expected a lot more than a pointless start as they have had. So, you know, that's a worry. Tottenham, this weekend, it's easy to forget, this is the game that was due to be their first game at White Hart Lane, and they're still at Wembley, and that's an embarrassment for Spurs, whichever way you look at it. Personally, I do take a little bit of a sympathetic view, simply because I think, rather like Man City, they will improve that local area beyond recognition with this new stadium. It was where I take issue with Spurs was to suggest it could be ready in just over a year was just nonsense, and I just think they should have been should have been perhaps more realistic, perhaps honest even from the very start, and I think that's where they let themselves down. But the interesting thing for me is that Arsenal sort of the coffers are bare. They really struggle with the wages, and they really struggle with the turnover to balance the books. And I have to say, all those teams are struggling while the two Manchester clubs are making hay while the sun shines and riding off into the sunset. There'll be streets ahead while sort of all the other clubs get themselves back in order. That's
but John, it isn't just that the coffers are bare at Arsenal. They are at Tottenham because they've not only is this stadium delayed, they're through the £1 billion spend. It's an extraordinary figure. They haven't yet admitted it. I haven't yet seen it reported too widely, but they are. And who knows what's happening at Chelsea? Who'll be in charge? Who'll own Chelsea 12 months from now?
Well, you have to be realistic with Spurs in that basically it's very unlike Daniel Levy. A lot of people point out, saw an agent yesterday who's convinced that the transfer window just caught him unawares and caught them out rather unprepared. But I would take issue with that and say that basically he didn't do business simply because he doesn't know really what's happening with the stadium.
Yeah, he can't.
And so I think he's a very frugal businessman, and so therefore he was unprepared, I think, to take much of a gamble, and therefore kind of he's going to leave things until he knows the picture is clearer. Now that's seriously bad news for Spurs fans, because can you compete for the title without buying a new player in the summer? I'm not sure you can. I think that's the biggest worry for them. And Chelsea, the only thing I would say about Chelsea is look at their midfield trio. That midfield trio is as good as anything midfield-wise in the Premier League. And I think that is why Chelsea might just upset a few people, perhaps including myself, because I didn't think they'd finish top four, but they might just.
They might. A couple of quick stories, John. One, are we really talking in terms of Pellegrini might be on his way out, even this early in the season? And two, could my club Everton get deducted points for this Silva affair?
Yeah, I'd be very surprised, Andy, if Everton got dot points. I must say, simply because I think it will be a hefty fine. I think what they're looking to do, even if you think that basically the Ashley Cole affair, which the Times story relates in its piece today, that actually notes that basically that the points deducted then was suspended. So I would be surprised.
John, can I just interrupt? This whole story baffles me. Tapping up. I'm sorry. When does that not happen? We had Martin Edwards on this programme last season saying we arranged a meeting with Alex Ferguson in a car park in Aberdeen. We recognised the number of his... I mean, it's been happening from time immemorial. What have Everton done that other clubs don't?
Yeah, it is. I completely agree with you. Where I think it's unusual is that basically the club that's been offended, i.e. Watford, have really taken issue about this, and it's so rare because everyone knows it happens, everyone knows and appreciates it goes on. So I just don't think that most clubs bother with it. But Watford were determined to take a stance. They've taken this very, very strong stance, and they've made an example of it. Where I think Watford feel really aggrieved is that basically they feel that their season dropped off a cliff once that Silva had his head turned. And I think that's the issue that Watford have really taken. It's very unusual for a club, I think, and a manager and a team to fall off like that in terms of performances after he's been tapped up. He was desperate to go, and I think that's their issue with it. But let's be honest, it happens all the time. As for Pellegrini, I think that Pellegrini will see out. I do. I think results will inevitably improve. It just cannot go on like this. They have got some decent players. Where I'd point to in the longer-term future is surely, I think, the owners of the club. And I know it's not easy to replace owners. They have to get good people in. They have to find a buyer. But surely at some point they have to take some ultimate responsibility and say, look, we're not working out for this club. We're not right for this club. We're not moving this club forward. It's time for someone else to have a go. I think it runs far deeper, in fairness to Pellegrini. I'm not sure Pellegrini's going to be the right appointment, but I do think that basically the club need to look a bit deeper than the manager.
It did make me laugh this week, John, when David Gold was saying, you know, we need to curb the influence of agents at football clubs. Well, there's one I could recommend you start with, David.
His own.
Yeah, your own.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would make a big difference straight away.
Yes.
John, we thank you for your time.
Thanks, John.
And look forward
Pleasure,
to speaking
guys.
to you
Nice
next
to be
week.
with you.
Thanks,
Look
pal.
forward to it.
Cheers, John. John Cross, Chief Football Sports Writer at the Daily Mirror. Right, when we come back, Girona versus Barcelona in Miami, a La Liga fixture. It's caused a real stir this week. We'll discuss next on Keys and Gray. Great to have your company. Now you've found us, tell your mates where we are if you're indeed watching on Twitter. If you're watching us traditionally, great to have your company. Now,
Why? No, that's fine. I don't mind that.
what do you mean that's fine?
Well, I don't mind. Listen, we never disagree. When Richard Scudamore, how many years ago,
Decade, at least.
suggested a 39th game and was laughed out of town.
Yes.
Well, you and I
Well,
thought
he
that was a
wasn't
very
laughed.
good
He
attitude.
actually was aggressively run out of town.
Yeah.
But the Spanish, and here's the president, Javier Tebas, saying our ambitions now reach beyond the US. That's where we're starting, but we're taking our game global.
Yeah.
The first one, Girona, 49% owned by Manchester City against Barcelona.
But the big key to that statement you just made there, it's not Verona, it's Barcelona. You're not going to take Girona against Levante.
Hey, who knows?
No, they're not, because you've got two men and a dog watching it.
Who knows?
I know.
Joris Evers is La Liga's Director of Communications and joins us live. Joris, thank you very much for doing so. Now,
oh, it's a true pleasure to be with you, gentlemen.
First of all, I think we've got to deal with Girona and Barcelona. Start of the week, I had a belief it was going to take place. Back end of the week, it's caused such an issue, it looks as though it might not. Where are we?
Well, if it's up to us, of course, you know, this is going to happen. And we are very excited about the opportunity to bring a La Liga match to the U.S. for the first time in history, actually to outside of Spain for the first time in history. And we think this is going to be a spectacle that many people in the U.S. will truly enjoy. And it will help, you know, Barcelona, it will help Girona, and it will help La Liga, and it will help football, or soccer, as it's called in the U.S. in general, get bigger, which is ultimately our goal, to help grow soccer around the world.
But I guess when you're doing that, Joris, it's going to be important, I'm guessing, for Spain, as for the La Liga, that clubs like Barcelona, that clubs like Real Madrid, that clubs like maybe Valencia, Atletico Madrid, those are the main ones, I'm guessing, that you're going to put out there initially to attract the attention. Would that be fair?
Well, initially, you know, obviously it's important to have recognizable names join us in this adventure of going to the States and bringing matches outside of Spain. But it's something that is, and it's important to state, voluntary, right? We're not forcing any of our clubs to do this. We are offering this opportunity. We're asking our clubs who would like to do it. And Barcelona and Girona were the ones that stepped up. And then we went together with them and asked the Federation, the Spanish FA, earlier this week for permission to do just that.
Now, Joris, I have to confess here to an interest beyond a level playing field. I'm a big fan of this idea. Andy's extremely sceptical. So I feel something of a fraud when I put it to you, aggressively, as I must. What about the reaction in America? What are MLS saying about this if you're bringing in these heavyweights from Spain? I can't imagine that they would be too pleased about that at all.
Well, from my perspective, and it's actually something that La Liga is doing in many places around the world, we are working with local leagues around the world in many different countries. Ecuador, just to give you one example, is one country where La Liga is helping Liga Pro to create a new Ecuadorian professional football league. And we've said many times before that in any country around the world, we would like to be the second most favorite league after the local league. We think it's very important for soccer in the US, for football around the world, to have strong local leagues, because people in those markets can have real relationships with the players, with the clubs, go to the stadium and be there all the time. And then La Liga would love to be everybody's second most favorite, the international league in every country.
Joris, if this proved to be, in your mind, a success, yeah? How many of that, 380 La Liga games a year, is it? 380?
Yeah, 380. That's quite a number, no?
What percentage of those 380 La Liga games could you see being played all over the world?
Well, let us just start with one for now, right? I mean, this is something that is unprecedented, right? We have never done this before. You know, you've mentioned 10 years ago somebody else tried, wasn't successful. So let us try just one and see how it goes, and learn from that. You know, obviously we've seen our partner in the U.S. market, you know, Relevant, who puts on the ICC, which are friendlies, of course, but being very successful bringing international clubs to the U.S. market and filling stadiums up to 100,000 people. And we think we've got the right partner. We think the U.S. market is ready for it. We think many people will love to see a sports spectacle like a La Liga match, which is not just sports, it's entertainment, take place in the U.S. So we want to do that first, that one match.
Joris, you said both clubs stepped forward. I'm also something of a conspiracy theorist. Is it Girona because they're 49% owned by Manchester City? Is it Barcelona because Begiristain and Soriano, of course, have very, very deep links with that football club? Should I be suspicious that the only captain that was missing when those from La Liga met recently to object to this scheme was Lionel Messi? Do all of those things add up in any way at all?
I gotta say that, you know, you gentlemen have been in football for such a long time, and actually for me, I've only been in football for a little over a year, so this world is relatively new to me, but I'm loving all the conspiracy theorists, you know, it's flying around all the time. There's somebody did that here, somebody did that there, there's sources here, sources there. Like, from my perspective, if you look at it very, you know, factually speaking, you know, Girona is a club that is doing extremely well in La Liga, that made it into the first division last season, that is a rising star in La Liga, that went to India over the summer to play in Kolkata and had great impact in India. And of course, Barca is one of the biggest and the best known names in La Liga and the champions from last season.
Okay, two quick questions to follow up with. Let's start with one. I get that. But is this the way football's going, do you think? And is this a marker for La Liga, for the Premier League, to tell the English we're coming after you?
Well, so first of all, we admire the Premier League. You know, when we look at the Premier League, they've achieved so much. The EPL has achieved so much over its, you know, storied history, including building a really strong brand, including having many different teams and many clubs that are well known in many places around the world. And, you know, we're envious of that, of course, but we also admire it. We would like to be and to achieve that level, and hopefully we can supersede the Premier League. Ultimately, that's the goal. So that's where we're going. And I think when it comes to Spanish football, La Liga is watched all around the world, as you guys very well know. You know, you guys are watched all around the world, and La Liga is watched all around the world. And we want to work hard to get even closer to our fans that are everywhere. You know, fans in the Middle East, or fans in the US, or fans in Australia. Anywhere we want to get closer to our fans.
Joris, final one then. Can you foresee a scenario perhaps in a decade where Real Madrid are playing Manchester United on a Friday night in New York?
You guys can talk about many, many different scenarios as much as you'd like, but I'm not going to go and engage you on any of those.
Good.
Joris, have you ever thought of being a politician?
Thank you for the career opportunity, I would say.
I was just about to say, Joris, if you don't mind, what were you doing before you joined La Liga?
I worked at Netflix for 5 years, rolling out Netflix around.
That's quite interesting.
Very interesting.
That really has interested me.
Could be a very big player, Netflix, in the future.
Joris, I can see why you're Director of Communications. Absolutely brilliant. And
Thanks,
thank you.
Joris.
Really enjoyed
My
it.
pleasure.
Good luck with it all.
Have a good day, guys.
Joris Evers,
Bye.
La Liga's Director of Communications. That's fascinating.
Did you say Netflix?
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is, yeah. You see, your mind's gone now. It's conspiracy
well, of course
theory.
it has, because he's there for two reasons. I would suggest to you. One is that he's brilliant at what he does, extremely good at communication.
I thought he was terrific. Yeah.
And he answered every question we had without really answering any of the questions that we had. So it doesn't really take us much further forward.
Politician.
But you know my feeling when I talk about globalisation. I think that the days of the Premier League being played exclusively within the borders of England,
I don't mind that,
are behind us.
I don't mind that.
I think this is going in another direction entirely, Andy, because it is possible for us, as we know now with an electronic device, to push a button. Last week, fascinating that the EFL put to line, made available all the fixtures in League One and League Two that were kicking off at 3 o'clock on Saturday to stream.
Wow.
All of them live.
Wow.
Now, our friend Accrington, his name escapes me.
That's about 24
the chairman of
fixtures.
Accrington was furious. He thinks he's been tucked and that wasn't quite explained. Others, Peterborough United's chairman said, "Great, this is the way." No football club owner has bought into football to make a loss at his football club.
No, they haven't. Not now.
And whether we like it or not, football is business.
Of course, it's huge business.
And it's going to become even bigger business. There's right now squeezed just about everything they can.
I don't know what the foreign ownership was like in Spain, but we know what the foreign ownership was like in the Premier League in England. And those foreign owners are not in there just to pump money into clubs just because they like the club.
Of course they're not.
They're there to make money.
Gary Speed. Wow, even now.
Yeah.
I get emotional when I think about Gary.
Yeah.
New book out, Unspoken, The Untold Story of the Family, written by John Richardson, who is our next guest. John, a former Express journalist, I think former, might even still be working for the Express. We'll find out when we speak to John. There he is. John, how are you?
Very good, Richard. Nice to see you again, you and Andy.
Hi, John.
Nice to
good to see you as well.
John,
we're nearly seeing you. You're drifting off the street.
You are. Just forward and to your left a little bit, John, and we'll see more of you with your electronic device.
If you tilt it down a little bit, John, we'd...
Tilt it down.
There you go. Whoop.
That's it.
That's better.
Fine figure of a man.
Tilt it the other way. I've changed my mind.
I said former Express journalist. John, am I right, or is it current?
Yeah, Mirror Group now. An honorary freelance, Andy.
Honorary freelance for the Mirror Group.
We're
quite happy to put the record straight. Now, this is a subject that I get quite emotional about. Gary Speed.
And likewise. Yeah.
Do we know why, John? Is that something that you ventured into when writing this book?
We have. When we were spoken to, obviously, Louise came on board. I was only going to do this book if Louise Speed gave permission. And at first, you know, she did give permission, but it took time. And then she came on board and she contributed 10,000 words. And a lot of them are very moving, as you can imagine. And yes, what is illuminating is that there were some letters that they were childhood sweethearts. So at the age of 17, they wrote letters to each other, you know, before mobile phones, etc. And looking at this book, while we're doing the book, Louise managed to find these letters, and some of them, as I say, written at 17, showed that Gary was not in a very good place at times. You know, he said that in one letter that he was depressed and he didn't know whether he wanted to wake up again in the morning. So a lot of this has obviously been hidden from all of us.
That's quite a revelation, John, and it leads on to the next question. Naturally, then, Gary's name has been linked a lot with these sexual abuse stories that have come to the surface in the last 5-6 years or so. Anything in that?
No, we don't go into that, Andy, because you know that as you say, they were rumours, a lot of innuendo, and I think that when anybody reads this book, then they read Louise's account of this book.
Right.
They will see that he was obviously suffering from depression at times, which was hidden from all of us, me included. I was doing his original autobiography before he died, and you know he was always chirpy, he was cheery.
Yeah.
But you never know, do you, what goes on behind closed doors and what goes on in people's minds. And what I've done also, as I've spoken to other people like Neville Southall, Ian Rush, Robbie Savage, all people that knew him, Gary McAllister, people like that, all people that knew him, and we go into it quite deeply. And Neville Southall is very good on mental illness, as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. You know, he always saw Gary as a sort of a half pint full person. You know, he saw things that maybe some of us didn't see.
Yeah, that's a subject in itself that we're more prepared to discuss openly now and take seriously, whereas I think one time in a football dressing room, it was a matter for a little bit of hilarity, really, wasn't it? Well,
yeah, I mean, you know, all of us feel down at times, but do we admit it? You know, certainly in a dressing room, you know, well, Andy knows better than most. You know, you'd be laughed at, wouldn't you?
Yes,
you
would have been.
You'd say, "Oh, get a grip of yourself." You know, it's things like that, and you make fun about it, don't you? But it is a serious subject, and Neville, as I say in the book, is very good on that, and he thinks that football clubs should look at this a lot more closely. But you know, back to Gary. I mean, even Louise didn't know at times. You know, the only thing she says that he often in the evening would take himself off into the room and play his guitar for, you know, hours on end and not come down. And at the time, she didn't read anything into that now. But in hindsight's great, isn't it? You look back and think, well, you know, maybe we could have done something, all of us. You know, everybody I've spoken to in the book says, oh, I wish he could have picked the phone up to me. Yeah. You know, Steve Harper was very good at that, because Steve Harper, as you know, did admit to his depression. But Gary, I think, was somebody who kept this secret and with tragic consequences. Yeah.
Was it a tough one to write, John, for you?
It was, Richard, because, as I say, we've reproduced 2 of the chapters that he did originally. And then I had this idea about, you know, speaking to people about him. But as you can imagine, everybody I've spoken to, and there's 24 people in this book, they have to reawaken their emotions, because each chapter starts like with JFK moment, you know, where were they when they heard the tragic news? So we start off like that. And obviously, you know, emotions are still raw. As you said earlier, Richard, even, you know, it's 7 years in November, but it still hurts to this day. You know, we've all lost people, parents, etc., etc. And you do, I'm afraid, you have to expect your parents, you know, depart, but you don't expect somebody like Gary Speed, who was so bright and breezy, who was fantastic at his job, was just a lovely person, had, you know, 2 lovely lads, a lovely wife, and suddenly he disappears. And you know, we all ask ourselves why, of course.
Are you like me? Is it a number you can't take out of your phone?
Yeah, it's still there. It's still there. In fact, you know, like everybody, I heard the news, and my immediate reaction was to ring him. And you know, the call rang out, and then it went into answered. No, it's still there, and it will remain forever.
Well, John, on behalf, I think, of all of us, thank you very much for actually venturing into this area. Give Louise our best wishes. Book's out next week. I'm very much looking forward to reading it as well. Thanks for your time, John.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean.
My pleasure.
John Richardson, the author of Unspoken, the family's untold story on Gary Speed. What a guy. Football from the Championship.
Big derby.
Well, is it? Whatever I've said to you about...
It's a rivalry.
Yeah. So is this a derby?
It's a West Midlands-ish Black Country.
It's a Birmingham
rivalry.
Derby. It's a Birmingham
derby. It's not.
City at home against West Brom tonight, 21:45. Arabic coverage on 2, English language with us here on 11. Paris Saint-Germain are playing tonight as well, 21:45 on 6 and 16, if you prefer. That's a great game against Saint Etienne. That really is. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for your company. Now you found us, if you've been watching on Twitter, tell your mates, and we look forward to seeing you back here same time next week.